Hi, everyone. Before I introduce this week's episode guest, I just wanted to invite you or ask you to please help me get this show into the ears of more women. I really think that the topics we cover in this show are so meaningful and so powerful and so life transforming. I want more women to hear the messages here, messages from my beautiful guests, messages from myself, about how we can live our most empowered, authentic, joyful, and peaceful lives, and how the answers really are all within. We just have to have the tools to get to them. So I ask you to please talk about this show with your friends, like it, share it, comment on it, write a review, post about it on social media, any way that you can think of to get this show into the ears of more women. And I really do believe that it all starts within, but we are also energetic beings, and we are deeply impacted by the energy of the people around us and the culture with which we live. And so the more women who can be hearing these messages and can be doing the inner work and transforming themselves, the more positive energy we're surrounding ourselves with, and it just feels amazing. So help me to do that for this world. Help me to do that for the women that are close to you in your life, and I think we can make a real difference. Okay, I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Mom on the Verge. Today, I speak with Lynette Reiling, and she is the author of the book, Your Encore Life Takes Center Stage for Life's Second Half. And we met in a kind of an unusual way. I am part of an online platform for coaches and therapists and entrepreneurs of all types, really. And mostly it's for us to connect and build relationships with other people in similar industries as us. And Lynette found me. She found my profile and she thought it was interesting. And so she reached out. And we just communicated back and forth on this platform. And when she told me about the book that she had written, I said, oh my gosh, you have to be a guest on my podcast. And she generously agreed. And this was her first podcast episode ever, and she did fantastic. We really talk about how, life in the second stage, and Lynette really geared this book for people 50 and above, but as we talked about some of the concepts in the book and the philosophy behind it, it was so clear that this can be applied in any stage of your life. And in fact, the younger you start applying these concepts, probably the better, probably the happier you're going to be, the more fulfilled you're going to be, the more purpose you're going to have. So she's sending me a copy of the book. I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited. And it's filled also with journal prompts and actionable steps that you can take, which I also love when a book, takes philosophy and then helps you break it down into things that you can actually really do in your life. It helps you get clarity. And that's what Lynette's book really is all about. She was just such a joy to sit and speak with. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. You'll be able to see how her and I are very similar despite our 30-year age difference. And honestly, I hope to be her at 75. I truly, truly hope to be a Lynette at 75. And I know you're going to feel the same way. So take a listen, and I will talk to you at the end. All right. Hi, Lynette. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
I'm excited to have this conversation. You just stand for everything that I believe in about aging right and well, and like living into your purpose into forever, right? Into as long as we're here. And you recently had a book come out. When was that published?
Well, it just came out on Amazon a week ago.
A week ago. Okay, we're recording this in mid-September. I think today is September 20th. So, if you're listening to this, it came out a week before September 20th on Amazon, and it's called Your Encore Life Take Center Stage for Life's Second Half. And I love the title as well, but I wanted to read a short little bit here that you have on your website because it just really resonated with me so much. And I'm going to find it here. I'm so sorry that I had to move it. Here it is. It says, how do I begin writing a new life script for the second half of my life? There are tools you can use to gather your energy to yourself, identify and release that which no longer serves you. Set the stage and claim your authentic leading role as the star in your own next act. Writing your script for your new act requires a good deal of self-compassion, courage, rebellion, and creativity. The task lovingly consider important questions, have conversations about what is possible, think new thoughts, capture ideas and write them down, then go out and try them and see how they fit. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the whole process right there.
Yes, it's this whole process of just rethinking, changing mindset, trying stuff on for size, seeing how it fits. I particularly love the rebellion piece. That was my favorite. When you said a good deal of courage and you put rebellion in there, because it actually, I think for a lot of women, it really does require that rebellious spirit to step out of the roles that they've always played and the ways that they've always seen themselves, and do the thing that actually their body and soul has been calling them to do all along.
Absolutely. If we don't have that rebellious spirit as we age, it's so easy to end up the quiet little lady in a corner. And you think about being on center stage, this quiet little lady is not even on the stage. She's off hiding in a curtain somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, the next part, which I'll also read because I thought it was so good, it says, why is it so important to embrace this fresh new narrative of aging? The other option is sinking into an old narrative of aging that will lead to decline, diminishment, and deterioration, the dreaded 3Ds. And that is so true. And I've seen it so often in older people that I know personally in my life, but family members, neighbors, where they really just almost, it seems like they're disappearing.
Yeah.
And
that's where the rebellion comes from is,
yeah.
if you do not stand up for yourself, speak your words, and have that kind of energy, it's really easy as an older adult just to become invisible. And our society treats older adults that way.
Yes. And I think it starts a lot sooner than we may think that it starts. I know personally, and I've spoken to my friends about this, that as I entered my 40s, I started feeling more invisible because you start, aging, you're not that young woman anymore. And in our society, we put so much emphasis and importance on women and them being youthful and beautiful. And your body changes, your face changes, everything starts to change, and people start treating you differently.
Wrinkles, some gray
Yes.
hair here and there. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's wild to see it happen at what I would consider to be a really young age in your 40s, but it absolutely does. Once you leave that 30s mark, society somehow starts to view you differently, and you feel it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you are experiencing it already. I talk about in my book, I talk about a cast of characters, and one of our cast of characters is the inner ageist.
Mm.
And so it's not only the ageism that floats around outside, but really starting at a pretty young age, we start developing our own inner ageist based on the messages that we are getting about getting older, about how we watch people being treated as they're older, about in this society, it's you don't have value once you get to, well, you're talking about in your 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So we develop an ageist within us, and we start doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We start passing on those messages to ourselves about, well, you're not important anymore, or you can't meet the standards of beauty anymore. You're just going to be a wrinkled up great old lady.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we are some of our worst critics is ourselves.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you come to this? How did you come to decide to write this book and think that this was important enough to do this work?
Well, I have a friend. We've been meeting every Tuesday morning for 25 years. And at the end of our time together, we always read a book. And we read from the same, it's a daily reading from the same book for all these years. And a few years ago, we started going, this just doesn't fit anymore. And it really was a book designed for, excuse me, designed for a woman your age, like a woman in her 40s or 50s. And I was reading another book from a woman by the name of Connie Zweig, and was about aging. So I contacted her and I said, do you know of any daily reading books out there that are appropriate for mature women? And she went, no, not really. And I said, well, why don't you write one? And I don't know exactly when it happened, but I went, well, why don't I write one?
Right.
And I've done a lot of classes for older adults, mature adults. My last gig was at Boomers Leading Change, which I was the storefront, so I had to create presentations. So I had stacks and stacks and stacks of files. I've got 2 bookshelves full of books on midlife, and I just went, I have all the information. I just need to figure out how to put it together.
Wow. Wow. I love that. That is so great. I love how you turned it around. You're like, wait a minute. Why am I outsourcing this? Why don't I do this? That's great. And I've heard writing a book is no easy task.
Oh, darling, it's the longest pregnancy I've ever had.
That's what I hear. I hear it is really challenging. So truly kudos to you. Good job for sticking it out and, giving birth to it and putting it out into the world.
Well, I have to give some credit to my book coach. Her name is Amy Collette, and her company is Unleash Your Inner Author. And that is what she does. She starts from the very beginning with, if you have an idea, all the way through to putting it on Amazon and all the steps in between. There's a lot of details. I never would have been able to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
Without her hand.
Well, that's awesome that you found her, but you were still had to be willing to do the work and willing to learn. There's got to be a lot of learning, that goes along with this.
Absolutely. Well, I have some years ago, I went through a process of discovering my why. And you talk about, you have that whole idea of purpose. This is Simon Sinek's work.
Okay.
And my why is to advocate, educate, and inspire others so they feel empowered to live their best lives possible. And that's my yardstick I use to determine about doing something. Is it going to take me closer to my why or further away? And this book was absolutely on target about this is my why.
Yes, I love that. I literally was just on a coaching call this morning with a client, and she's struggling with some decisions she needs to make around work. And we were talking about core values and how we really need to identify our core values, which is exactly what you're talking about, your why, and then live out from that. And every decision needs to be put up against the why or the core values to decide if it's the right decision for us.
Especially in your work life, because it's, it's about knowing, well, who am I first? And then how does that fit with this company? Are we in sync with each other as far as values? Or if you're not, it's not going to be a happy situation for you.
Right. It's never going to work if you're constantly rubbing up against, things that just don't align with your core values.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about really to me requires that people maintain what's called a growth mindset. And for our listeners who don't know, a growth mindset is basically this constant state of curiosity and openness and willingness to continually learn and change our mind about things and change our viewpoints and our beliefs. And it can be hard, I think, especially as people age. I personally have seen it like in my parents and my grandparents. They don't always want to maintain that growth mindset because it's hard. Learning new stuff is hard. Yeah.
Sometimes it's like swimming up against the tide,
Yeah. Especially in this world of technology that we live in right now. I mean, I still consider myself a fairly young person, and then trying to maintain an open growth mindset around technology can be challenging. So how do
But
you help
about
people? Yeah, about the technology. Oh, it's horrible.
about the time you figure it out, they've changed it all and you kind of have to start over again anyway.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
so frustrating.
It takes courage to stand in that growth mindset. In my book, I have what I call the inner scientist.
Mm.
So picture the woman scientist. She's got her lab coat on. She's working in her lab, all this bubbly stuff in front of her, and she's experimenting, and she tries something and evaluates it and goes, yeah or no, this isn't quite it. And she goes back to the drawing board and does more. And that's what we have to develop to be able to live a vibrant second half of life. That's one of the characters that we need to develop, is that inner scientist. She's curious, she's willing to try, she's willing to risk and go back and do it again.
Yes, yes, I love that. And it's also the willingness, like you're saying, maybe she likes it, maybe she doesn't, but if she decides she doesn't like it, to be able to not view that as a failure, but instead to use it as just a piece of data, a piece of information that she can now plot against the next thing that she does.
Well, if she sits in judgment of what's happened and labels it a failure, she is not going to be able to learn what she needed to learn from that experiment.
Right.
And so much of creating this second half of life is experimenting, trying things on to see how it fits and going yay, nay, or oh, this is sort of okay, but maybe I need to just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a way that, like, I don't know if in the book or if you just have a recommendation for our listeners, but how do we, if we're not naturally curious and open-minded and we don't naturally have that growth mindset, if that's not our kind of tendency, how do we cultivate that?
Well, in reading this book, throughout the book, actually, I have sections on journaling your thoughts. And so as you're going along, just like the mad scientist does, she makes notes of what she's doing. There's a lot of information in here and places to stop along the way. I ask a lot of questions and invite the reader to take out their journal, answer the questions, and sit with the thoughts that are coming up. So it really is like just one step at a time.
Yes, yes, one tiny step at a time. That's really is what it takes, is one tiny step at a time.
Yeah, yeah, and being able to use your creativity is huge, because that is really the secret sauce of resilience as we grow older. Being able to understand and use intention. These are all script writing tools that I have in my book.
Yeah.
Compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for others. Forgiveness, and I call that the best weight loss program in the world. So it's developing these tools that are going to help you write this script for this next stage of your life. And rebellion is one of them.
Yes, the rebellion is huge. And so when would you say you started feeling like it's time, like I need to, was it that conversation that you had with your friend while you were reading that book and realized that it no longer fit you? Or when did you realize, you know what, this is a new stage in my life and I need to create it, and I need to decide what I want to create?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, maybe a little history.
Sure, I love history, love the backstory.
Okay. Well, I spent 8 years working in hospice as a volunteer coordinator. So I saw, and this was into my 50s, I saw a lot of people who were facing the end of their lives in the different ways that how it worked for them. You talk about purpose, and I know that's a big piece of your work. So people who got to the end of their lives without a sense of purpose died very different than people who had the opportunity to look back over their life and could put meaning and purpose around what their life had been about. So I decided to go back to school in my early 60s. I went into a coaching program And, my goal was to create this thriving coaching practice as I was retiring at 65, 66, and had just finished school and was just getting on track for that. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I actually was working part-time for this organization called Boomers Leading Change. And that was going to be part of my income while I was creating this coaching practice. And it just was not the time. I mean, I had a mastectomy in 2017 and another one in 18. And I loved what I did at Boomers Leading Change.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I could see what a difference it made for people who could come into an organization, use their skills, use what was important to them to be able to work with nonprofit organizations and have that sense of purpose and do something good for others. And the organization, Boomers, closed their doors about 2.5 years ago. They lost their funding and closed their doors. And I have been in a lot of transition myself, moving to a new town in the middle of COVID. Yeah, that's an interesting.
That's that.
Yeah. And just this felt like an important book to write. And I am on kind of the other end of this. I'm 75. And so I have watched my peers go through this process. I've journeyed with my peers through this process and realizing just how important it is to be able to consciously create this second part of our lives. Because if we don't consciously do it, it's going to be reacting to everything else that's outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in there's several things I want to go back to, but just that last piece, I think when in the younger years of our lives, we're kind of following life's script. We're going to school, we're getting the jobs, we're getting the partners, the houses, the kids, and then the kids keep us very busy. And so we're very, very busy. And we sometimes forget to think about what we really want and what is meaningful to us and what gives our lives purpose. But we also have a lot of inherent purpose in raising our kids and paying the bills and all those things.
Well, and your job, your job gives you a sense of all of it.
And hopefully you have a job that you like and yes, gives you a sense of purpose. But yeah, in this second half of life, a lot of time opens up for most people. And then it's how do you fill that time? And are you going to fill it in a way that's going to fill you up, right? And make you feel energized and excited by life still, or just kind of like, I'm aging and
just sort of cruising through the days and waiting for the Grim Reaper to show up.
Right. Yes.
Doesn't that sound exciting?
It's terrible. And to your point about, that people who had a lot of purpose in their life died very differently than those people who did not. Purpose has been linked to longevity and to mental and physical health. People who have a purpose-driven life live a lot longer and are a lot healthier. I didn't know that they died differently, but I will tell you, have you ever read Bonnie Ware, something Regrets of the Dying? I don't know if it was like top 10 Regrets of the Dying. It's been a bestseller for many, many years. And I can link it in the show notes so people can find it. But basically she was a hospice volunteer for many years, but she sat at the bedside of patients who were passing away, who didn't have a lot of family. And, she would kind of fill in the gaps so that these people would not have to be alone when they were coming to the end of their life. And she started talking with them, like they were still able to have conversations with her. And she started writing down everything that they would say that they most regretted they hadn't done in their life. And the number one thing was that people repeatedly said, I lived my life for someone else instead of for me. Like I didn't actually do the things in my life that I truly, genuinely wanted to do. And now I can't.
It's too late. Yeah.
Too late.
One of the script writing tools I talk about is self-mastery. So it is about authoring your own life. And that's exactly what you're talking about when you talk about living your life for somebody else. And that's, I think, a lot of what we're called to let go of from the first half of our life is, the expectations, some of the roles we've carried. I talk about, as a younger woman, we have a made to order self.
Yeah.
It's that self that, all the expectations, the conditioning, everything else that has come from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And we are really asked to shed that to
Mm-hmm.
be able to move into the second half of life. Maybe not all of it, but the parts that just don't work anymore and that even can become barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you cover this in your book, but I would imagine it feels very confusing and overwhelming because you have lived so many years of your life fairly scripted with a lot to do and your time very managed by everything that it was needed of you. And then you enter this new phase with a lot more time, which when you're in the crunch, when you're in the time crunch, you're like, that sounds amazing. But then it must also feel like I remember my kids were really, really little and they needed like so much of me all the time. And I would be like, oh my gosh, I just need a break. I just need a break. And then miraculously, somehow, every once in a while, I would get a break. And then I'd be like, I don't even know what to do at this time. Like I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do. I feel very confused. I feel like I just need to go back and be their mom again. And so,
Well, that was your major role. And when
yes,
you're not acting in that role, then who were you and what were you supposed to be doing?
right. And I would imagine that that is how it feels to be in this second half of your life. It's like, if I don't have all of these things that I'm supposed to be, air quotes, supposed to be doing, what am I supposed to be doing? And who am I? And what is my identity?
Oh, yes, that's huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge. I talk about why in my book, I use the three-phase model of transition from William Bridges. He talks about endings, neutral zone, and new beginning. And what you're talking about is being in the neutral zone.
Yeah.
I'm not who I was, but I don't yet know who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And it's a time of being rather than doing. And it's allowing those things that need to bubble up from within inside to be able to listen to them, hear them, and use that information to help you take the steps into the new beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be very uncomfortable for people. That reminds me a lot of meditation. If you followed some of my stuff, you know that I'm a very I believe very strongly in meditation and in the benefits of it. And that's a lot of what it is. It's kind of like just sitting there with yourself and allowing whatever comes up to come up. But if you're not used to doing that, it can feel really sticky and
It's a practice, and there's a
squirmy.
reason why they call it a practice.
Yes, yes,
You have to
yes.
learn, it takes time and energy to learn how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to sit in the uncomfortable. As somebody else I interviewed, we were talking about this same concept, and she calls it the messy middle, where
Oh, that's it. Yes.
right, the messy middle, like there's
Yep.
it's the no longer and the not yet. It's right
Yep.
in the center of that, and it's messy. It is. It's uncomfortable, and it's kind of all over the place, and you don't know what to expect, but it's also really exciting.
Well, and there's another piece too. If I've always been a doer, and when I made this move after living in a townhouse in a community for 25 years. I moved to a new
Mhm.
city. My job ended. It was a bunch of things,
Yeah.
and the people around me, my sisters are going, oh, you need to go to the gym and start doing swimming. And my daughter was, oh, mom, here, I found this information on all the stuff that seniors can do in this part of the world that you're living in now. And it
Yeah.
was like I was so in the middle of that messy middle in the neutral zone.
Mhm.
And I had to protect against feeling forced into doing things. It was like,
Mhm.
I just need to be quiet right now. I need to settle into this new life. I need to just spend time with, well, who am I? Who am I now? And who do I want to be in this next part of my life?
Yeah.
And it was hard for the outside people around me because I've always been a doer.
Yeah.
And this wasn't about being a doer. This was about being a beer.
Yes. And amazing that you could do that since you were a doer your whole life, that you allowed yourself to just be. That's amazing.
Not easy.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I talk about the midlife superwoman.
Hmm.
I'm sure you know maybe a little bit about that.
Maybe just a smidge.
Yeah, just a smidge. And how the temptation was so great moving into this new town and everything. The carrot was right there about just putting my superwoman cape back on and just keep going in the same direction I'd always gone in. And
Yeah.
it would have been so much easier because I knew that really well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's some, I think, I'm a doer also, and we have to check ourselves and our belief system because sometimes underneath the doing is if I'm not doing, then what good am I? What value
Yeah.
am I
Yeah.
to the world or to my family or why am I even here if I'm not doing, right? And so that it is very easy when you're that type of person to just feel like I can't just what am I going to sit around and do nothing? Like what?
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? Like I'm not being an impact. I'm not having impact. But sometimes that's where you need to be. You need to sit and just be and allow the answers to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we can really get in our own way if we are in a major transition. I don't care what age you are, in a major transition, and you can't allow yourself that messy middle.
Yeah.
Because that's where the information, a lot of the regenerative energy comes to be able to step into that new beginning at some point in time.
Yes. I was literally just speaking to my neighbor this morning who's a real estate agent and someone she works with, her kids have just gone off to school. They're off in college. She was a single parent and she's taking 2 months off. And she is because her boyfriend apparently lives in Maryland and that's a couple states from where we are. And so she's just taking a couple months off to just be and think about what is this next step for me.
I say kudos to her.
So do I. I'm like, go, you go, girl. I
It
applaud
takes
you.
it takes courage.
Yes, it does. I mean, it takes courage to step out of the busyness and be with your own thoughts. There's a financial risk to her not, working for those 2 months. I mean, she can do it, thank goodness, but it's going to impact her bottom line. But she knows that she needs it. And I think there needs to be more people. We need to encourage women to be more like this woman, that when you need it, you take the space and allow it to tell you where to go.
So many of us, I'll speak for my generation in particular. I was a kid in the 50s and, into the teen years in my 60s. And so many of us were conditioned to be the good girl. And part of being the good girl was to be there to take care of everybody else.
Mhm.
And that keeps you away from being able to go center stage in this
Yeah.
second half of life. So it really is to be able to listen to your own inner wise woman.
Yeah.
And that's what your real estate friend did.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all of that. And I love the idea of taking center stage. I just love that visual. I love a good visual. And
Can I show you something?
yes,
I made
absolutely.
this is big, but I made a picture of
I've added the song
Oh,
to your
so sorry. I
playlist.
don't know what just happened there. Go ahead. Okay.
of
Oh,
that's what my book cover looks like.
I love
So
it.
there you are. There
Yeah.
she is. There's that woman who has said, I'm claiming my life, the second half of my life, and I am putting myself in the center of that life.
Yes.
So there she
Yes.
is.
Did you ever see the movie? Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it now, but these two women, it's Cameron Diaz and someone else, they switch houses. They do a house swap.
It was over the holidays.
It was over the holiday. I think it was called The
Yeah.
Holiday. I think that's
Yeah.
what it may be called.
Yeah.
And the woman who goes to California befriends this older gentleman who turns out to be like a screenwriter, and he has all these awards, but he's very elderly at this point, and kind of just stays by himself in his house. And so she befriends him, and he says he's very wise, and he says, in every movie there is the leading lady, and then there is like the sidekick. I'm not sure the term exactly that he uses.
The cast of supporting people.
Yes, exactly. And he's
Yeah.
like, well, you should be the leading lady in your own life, for God's sakes. And she has this like aha moment where she's like, yes, I should be the leading lady in my own life. And that really just always stuck with me. It just really like hit the heart, where I think so many of us we're not the leading lady in our lives.
Well, there's a time and a place. I mean, when you are, you're on the cusp of it right now, being in your, I'm not sure where in your 40s,
Mid 40s. I just turned
mid 40s.
46.
Woohoo, girl, you go. But just by the nature of the first part of your life, I mean, if you marry and if you have children, so much of your life is about the needs of other people, just
Mhm.
by the nature of your age and your circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, and is, I don't know if this is in the book either, but you mentioned, again, I read this on your website, and it said something like, um, inherently there's changes on the outside of us and changes on the inside of us. And then we start viewing the world differently. And part of the hard part, in my personal experience of getting a little bit older, is our bodies inevitably change, right? This is
Oh,
just the nature of the beast. And some of it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't really matter. It's just like very like, oh, I don't want to have wrinkles, right? Wrinkles aren't going to interfere with your life, but who wants wrinkles, right? But other parts of it make doing things harder. You have more pain. Your eyesight isn't as good. Maybe your hearing isn't as good. Like, you're not sleeping as well. You're going through menopause, right? You're experiencing all of these like physical changes that are unpleasant, not just because maybe you'd prefer to be more youthful, but because they're actually interfering with your life. And what would you say to women who feel like these physical changes are holding them back from what we're talking about, being, really living these purposeful, impactful lives?
wow, that's a big question too. I just think there's some of these changes are inevitable. I mean,
Mhm.
they are part of aging.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a balance that has to happen between accepting these changes. And if we're not accepting, we're resisting. And that just makes whatever it is we're unhappy with or trying to resist, it makes it bigger and more powerful. So it's a balance between accepting what's happening and at the same time to have some self-compassion and continue to move forward with these interesting changes and challenges
Yeah.
all the same to the degree that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
So
that.
there is and it changes every day as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And embracing, and again, I do still consider myself fairly young, but not as young as I once was. And starting to embrace that I might not be as good at certain things as I used to be, but I'm better at other things.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I've been working on, really embracing. So I work as a nurse also, and I used to be super quick, extremely quick with everything. And now I'm not as quick. I definitely have a slower pace, but I can connect with my patients so much better. I can, get them to open up to me so much better. There are things that I'm better at, but often in our society, we don't necessarily always value the things that we get better at with age. We seem to tend to value the things that we are better at in our youth.
Absolutely. And that's the very kind of thing that we need to be able to become consciously aware of
Mhm.
so that we can make different choices and decisions at this stage of our life.
Right? Because what worked for us when we were a certain age may not work for us now. And instead of making us feel like we are unworthy or not good enough, or this aging thing is bad because I can't do what I used to do, we can shift our perspective and say, but actually I'm really good at this other thing now, with the wisdom that I have and the knowledge that I've gained, and move in that direction.
I have a story about that. I have been a dancer my whole life. As a young woman, I studied under an instructor who studied under Martha Graham, who's the founder of modern dance.
Yes, I
I
know
was
that. Yes.
I was on a dance line. When
Wow.
I was married, my husband and I danced. We did a lot of that dating. We did ballroom dancing. And one of my biggest sadnesses when we divorced was that I lost my dance partner.
Yeah.
But I went through a desert period for a lot of years thinking, well, I can't do any of that anymore. And when I moved up here to Fort Collins, there's a wonderful senior center here. I found line dancing.
Oh,
I
it's
don't
amazing.
I don't need to have a partner. And, I can still get out on the dance floor and move my body. And I can't do it the same way I did as a young woman, but I'm still on the floor moving.
Yeah.
So it is adjusting as we need to, just like what you
Yeah.
talked about as far as the young nurse and the nurse who's a little more mature.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that you're not, you're like, I'm out there, I'm doing it. Like, I don't care what I look like. I don't care if I can't do what I used to do. I don't care. I'm going to do what brings me joy. I'm going to do what lights me up. And I'm not going to let anything anybody else says or thinks stop me from doing it.
Oh, girl, that's that rebellion thing again.
No, I love that word, rebellion. That's awesome. Well, is there anything that we did not cover today that you wanted to highlight from your book or make sure that our listeners are aware of?
Um, hmm. Well, it's just the idea. In fact, that's what part of the reason why the book is called what it is I have it set up. I use a model of this stage. And so when I talk about the things that are in front of the stage are like our conscious mind in our life and what we can see.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're watching a play, there is a whole lot that's going on behind the curtain that absolutely affects what's going on in front of the curtain, but you don't see any of that. So that's like what our subconscious is.
Yes.
So I try to use this whole theme of characters and stage and acting or whatever to help people understand some of these concepts and be able to use them.
I love that. Again, a great visual, which I love a great visual. um, and would you say that this book is geared towards anyone like who is of a certain age and older? Who's your target audience?
Had in mind women roughly age 50 to 70.
Okay.
And, for some women, they might be starting this whole process younger. And sometimes there is an event or something that happens in their life that really kind of pulls them into this process earlier. Losing a parent, going through a divorce, getting a diagnosis, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, 70, 75 is really kind of at the doorway towards moving into the next part of the fourth act of life.
Yeah.
So roughly 50 to 70.
Okay.
And I wrote it for women.
Mm-hmm.
We do this thing differently than men.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just needed to be for women.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you have your target, your target person or group that you wrote it for, but I feel like the lessons, all the things that you're talking about are so valuable to really any woman in any stage of life that if we could like learn these lessons even earlier, that we could be using them in our lives really at any stage.
That's really true. That's true. I have a daughter. I think she's the same age as you. She's about to be 47, actually in the middle of October.
Okay.
And she has not shown a whole lot of interest in this book up to this point. And I'm really hoping that she will give herself the gift of reading this book and really starting to think about and implement some of the things that are in this book.
Yes, I really do think that it's, we may have certain time constraints and pressures when we're younger that won't allow us to do certain things, but really the core of what we're talking about is important to start as young as you can. You should always be the center stage of your life. I know you're going to have to have your responsibilities, but you can't, in those responsibilities, you can't then like force yourself into the shadows and not exist because you're just taking care of other people.
Well, this word authenticity is thrown around a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are not center stage in our life, we are acting out the parts of somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Or my favorite was, it was for me, it was about security, acknowledgement, and being loved. And it was like, well, just tell me who you need me to be so I know how to
Yeah.
show up. Well,
Yeah.
that's not trustworthy and it certainly isn't authentic.
Yes, yes. How did you come to understand that that's how you were engaging in the world?
Therapy.
Okay, good.
Well, and I lost my parents when I was 32.
Oh,
My
yeah.
mom died first and my dad died 2 months later.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
that was the precipitating event that sent me into therapy, adult children of alcoholics,
Okay.
just a lot of intense recovery work and,
Yeah.
peeling back the layers and looking at who am I and what is this and how am I showing up in life and what do I believe about life?
Yes. And I think that first of all, I have to say you lived quite a life, Lynette. You've really you've really been through a lot and done a lot. You have really lived a life. But I think what you're describing is common, whether it's again like an illness or a divorce or some major event really does. I don't know what it is about the human race, but we tend to really learn through suffering. And when we start to suffer is when we start to open up and ask the hard questions and find the deeper meanings.
Well, we do or we don't.
Right.
We're
Yes.
back
Yes.
we're back to that conversation about courage. It takes courage to be able to do that.
Yes, it
And
does.
a huge dose of self-compassion.
Yeah. But if we don't, I think that's how people become bitter and angry and disappointed in life. I think having the bravery to open up and ask the difficult questions and do the self-inquiry and do all the inner work is what is the doorway into creating the life that we really, really want and really is joyful and creative and of service and impact and really will allow us to feel at peace inside.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of life I want to sign up for.
Me too. Me too. My like core priority is internal peace. So that is, I will do all the work to feel at home inside myself.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you so much, Lynette, for being here. I will put your website in the show notes, which leads them to your book. If there's anything else you want in there, just send it over to me and I will make sure that I get it into the show notes. Any other links or ways of contacting you or getting into your world, we'll make sure we put it all in the show notes.
Oh, that's wonderful. I appreciate that.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And it was so nice meeting you.
You as well. You as well. I want to check in with you when we're finished here for a moment, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I'm just going to stop recording. So hold on one sec. I don't know how you can't not love Lynette. She's just amazing. And I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did too. I hope took some really good nuggets away from it. One of the biggest pieces that I took away, or I guess two of the biggest pieces, is to be a rebel, right? To not be the good girl, to be a rebel for you, to be able to create the life that is really exciting for you and really fun for you and really just has so much meaning for you. Because really, why else are we here, right? Why else are we here on this planet if we're not here to do that? And that's what Lynette has done over and over. And despite a lot of challenges, as she mentioned, she is a cancer survivor. She went through a divorce. She lost her parents at a young age, and her parents were alcoholics. Lynette has not had an easy road, but she has chosen to take the struggle and use it for growth and for, really expanding herself and, creating a life that feels good to her and has a lot of meaning and purpose for her. So if she can do it, you can do it, I can do it, we can all do it. And I think she's just a really leading example of what aging beautifully looks like. If you watch this on Spotify, or I'm sorry, listen to this on Spotify, you can also watch it. And you'll see she's actually also very beautiful on the outside, but I'm talking about her inner beauty. So from this episode, what I invite you to do, the mindful moment this week, is to think about how you can become the leading lady in your own life. How you can, even if you are still in the midst of that phase of your life where you are very busy and you do have a lot of responsibilities, how can you find ways to be a leading actress and put yourself center stage and take yourself out of the shadows? That's my invitation to you. I highly encourage you to get Lynette's book because like I said in the intro, I think these lessons are applicable to women of all ages. And the younger we learn these lessons, the easier they will be to apply as we just keep practicing them over and over. So I highly encourage you to get her book. There'll be a link to it in the show notes, as well as a link to her website. Lastly, I ask you to please share this episode with someone that you care about, maybe your mom or your grandmother or an older sibling or anyone that you think is starting to shrink into the shadows, is starting to feel like their life, that they've lived their life and they really don't have anything left to contribute, or they can't do certain things anymore because of their age. Please share this with them. Give them the spark, the hope, the knowledge that they still can, they still can live a really full, meaningful life. All they have to do is make the decision to do it and then start taking a step at a time towards it. And if you do that, you've done a beautiful act of service for someone just by texting them or emailing them. You've performed a beautiful act of service. So those are my invitations to you this week. Think about how you can make yourself the leading lady in your life and take the time out, as we mentioned in the episode. Like if you need to take time, whether that be, if you're in a busy stage of life, simply a walk without anyone else, or some time to meditate, or some time to just sit in a coffee shop and have a cup of coffee and be with your thoughts. Take that time to be with yourself so that you can allow some of that wisdom to come in, and then apply it. All right, my friends, I will talk to you next week. Well, I'll talk to you later this week through a mini-sode. Please comment if you're on Spotify. If Spotify allows you to comment right through the Spotify app. Otherwise, if you have comments about the show, you can send them to katie@momandtheverge.org or message me on Instagram, which is Katie Mom and Yogi, and we will just continue this conversation about how we can be the leading ladies of our own lives. And if you haven't seen the movie The Holiday, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic film. You'll love it. All right, guys. Bye.